Franchise Secrets, Erik Von Horn.
If you're not a part of the Franchise Secrets Facebook group, what are you waiting for? It's franchisesecrets.com/Facebook. I cannot believe how valuable this group turned out to be. When someone asks a question, the feedback is honest, authentic, very helpful, and it's from multiple perspectives. If you're not sure that you're getting the most accurate information about franchising, then check out the largest, most helpful Facebook group in all of franchising. Whether you're a Z, a Zor, a buyer, or investor, join our free Facebook group at franchisesecrets.com/Facebook. Hey, I had an amazing conversation with Scott Frith with Happinest Brands. It's a family of brands where it's not like a private equity group that buys out brands. There's brands that are really young, emerging brands that partner with Scott and his group at Happinest to come into their family. The brand still remains brand president, or the founder's still involved. And so we got into more specifics on valuations, like what does a franchisor, what's it really worth at a certain stage, how to build enterprise value, when it makes sense to partner with a group like Scott, or it makes sense to go straight to private equity for a big sale. We got into all of that stuff. I asked him to get detailed, and he absolutely did, probably more detailed than anybody we've ever had talking about franchisors at this emerging stage. So I hope you find this conversation with Scott Frith with Happinest Brands interesting. All right, Scott, let's get rolling, man. I've been excited about this conversation. I've heard a lot about you from mutual friends and probably people that you don't even know that I'm talking to about you. So you're with Happinest Brands, and you've done a lot in franchising. So why don't you just give the listeners a little background to get started?
Yeah, that's great, Erik. Thanks for having me. Been looking forward to this as well. So Scott Frith, Chairman, CEO of Happinest. Been with the company for 26 years, which is kind of amazing to look back on. I've seen it go through every phase. My journey actually starts, my father hired lawn doctor when I was 6 years old back in 1978. We moved out from the city to the suburbs, had his first home with the lawn, had no idea how to take care of it, hires lawn doctor, becomes really good friends with that franchisee, and that franchisee introduces him to the founder of the company. My dad was working for another franchise brand, was looking for a change, and was hired to sell franchises out of a home office when I was 6 years old. So kind of interesting sidebar. It was actually our laundry room. So he came home and tore apart our laundry room, created a little home office, set up a desk that he got for free from a college that was giving it away, and started selling franchises back then. So that was my first exposure. You know, of course, I didn't know what was going on with the company and what my dad's job actually was. When I was 13 years old, I started working in our manufacturing plant. So we manufacture our own equipment. We outfit all our own vehicles. It's all proprietary to Lawn Doctor. And so I started there, just kind of, making some extra money when I had time and that sort of thing. And then I joined the company full time when I finished my undergrad in 1995. Started as a marketing assistant, and I've been, like I said, with the company for 26 years, held a lot of different roles in the company. My father's journey, to jump back to that, he kind of moved through the organization from that director spot, and ultimately took over as chairman CEO, and was with the company for 35 years, became a majority shareholder. When he exited in 2011, that's when I became the CEO of the company and kind of stepped into his seat. So been an amazing journey. I've seen it from all perspectives. I've seen it from the outside as a kid. I've seen it from the manufacturing plant. I worked in the marketing department, did franchise development, worked on some really cool IT projects and, things in the tech space. And then, seeing it from a leadership perspective, it's been pretty amazing.
I think that's cool, man. Like, I bought my first franchise, and then I started in franchise development, and I have so many friends that are in franchise development. So to kind of see where your dad started in Fran Dev with a brand in a closet with a free desk to like where you are today, I mean, like franchising changes people's lives. Like that's amazing. So then what was the role at Lawn Doctor? Like your last main role at Lawn Doctor?
So I started as a marketing assistant, and then I'm still the chairman CEO of Lawn Doctor and running Happinest, all of our brands. So I just, I always say I sort of bleed green. That's where I started. And, I always have an affinity for the brand. Of course, it's our anchor brand. It's been around for 55 years, super successful, #1 franchise in its space. And, you want to keep that connectivity. So I still run the day-to-day operations of Lawn Doctor and then oversee kind of the broader vision.
So let's talk about the broader vision. I think this is going to be an interesting conversation for franchisees and franchisors, just to understand kind of how some of these dynamic works with a, how would you describe happiness? Like what would you say that is?
So that broad question. So I think to me, it starts with the people, right? And my whole why in life, you kind of touched on this from a development perspective. Like I want to change people's lives. And I believe that to my core. When I wake up in the morning, it's what I think about. It's what I want to, kind of leave as my legacy. And so that includes our culture here and the kind of people that we're bringing in and attracting. And as you said, we've got mutual friends who, we know, and, just those people that are attracted to the company, we want the very best. And so it starts with, just kind of great environment, really a compelling vision that people want to be a part of, and just making sure that people are aligned with the way we do things here.
What brands are part of the network, or would you even call it a network? Like what would you call it, and what brands are part of Happinest?
So we've got Lawn Doctor, as I mentioned, 55-year-old brand, about 620 franchise locations, growing our footprint every year, breaking records in terms of top line growth every year since I've been involved and been fortunate to see that happen. We've got Mosquito Hunters. We partnered with about 4 years ago with Andy Fuller, the founder there. He had 6 franchise locations at the time. We've grown it to over 130. Wow. He's an amazing partner in this and delivering value to us every day. It's not sort of top down. It's sort of we're helping one another and true partners in that process. Couldn't ask for a better situation there. And then added EcoMates to the family, just over 2 years ago, and grew that brand from 2 locations to about 90 here in the last, 2.5 years. So been really successful, certainly very active in looking at other brands, and, just want to have about 15 different brands as our goal to service end to end around the home. Just think about it, the typical don't have time for it, don't want to do it, just don't have the skill sets, and kind of pressing into that space with a brand that can service that.
How long do you think it took, like Andy or EcoMates to get to, let's call it a handful of franchisees? Like how it's not easy. Like people think I just all of a sudden, spend some money, become a franchise, and get 10 franchisees open, and then just pour gasoline on the fire after that. It's not that easy.
Yeah, no, it's the beginning, and even for us, candidly, it's hard to go from few to many. Right. Yeah. It's hard work, and it's not for the faint of heart. It's not for everyone. So, specifically, I don't know each case, but, less than 20% of all franchise brands get past that, that 100 mark. Right. I mean, you just see most brands kind of sit in that infancy stage as an emerging franchisor. And again, that's because it's hard to have the capital, the infrastructure, the capability to attract the right kind of people to sort of pierce through and become a truly iconic national brand. And so, it takes many, many years just to get to a handful of franchisees. And that's sort of like the value proposition and what you can really offer them when you're in your infancy as a standalone brand versus what it looks like inside of, let's say, a Happinest. And so, it's typical that you start with a single unit and it's kind of your corporate store, if you will, and you grow that to a point, and then you look to franchise. And then I think what I saw as I talked to emerging franchisors is you kind of hit this wall and you realize that you need more. And the more is sort of what we bring to that equation.
So what would you describe yourself? Private equity, family of brands, private equity family of brands?
Yeah, it's kind of quasi, it's all those things, right? So we do have institutional capital behind us. So when my dad exited after 35 years, he had a liquidity event and we'd had a subsequent event. And so we do have some private equity institutional capital behind the company, which gives us the ability to pursue anything of any size that's of interest to us. It allowed us to kind of take a really familial business, keep that family vibe, but sort of, grow it up into a really professional organization with the right kind of capabilities and people around that. Definitely the culture and the vibe is still very much, we're Main Street USA.
That's what I've heard. That's what I've heard. And I kind of want to bring that distinction, like really give the audience, whether they're franchisors that might be part of the Happinest family, or just franchisees that are like, that's interesting. Or maybe they're franchisees that their franchisor gets acquired and they come into that. Because everyone, brands have been getting acquired like crazy recently. Yeah. Things have changed. I'm thinking in that, like what I hear from the venture capital tech world, things changed months ago with where they were deploying capital, and it's dried up quite a bit. How does that, what have you seen in terms of brand acquisition at the franchisor level recently, and where we sit right now, end of June, beginning of July, as we record this podcast? Real estate, residential, commercial real estate slowing down. Some people may feel that, some people may not understand that yet. Interest rates going up, inflation screaming, maybe a recession, maybe not. That's kind of where we're sitting. People deploying capital are deploying it differently. Brands are probably starting to get valued differently. So I just wanted to set that up to kind of get your eye on what you see happening out there right now.
I mean, that's a great synopsis, Eric. You're clearly plugged in. I think my view is great assets will always be great assets, right? And there's a scarcity in the marketplace. There's not a lot of really, really good franchise brands that are really well diversified and do things really well. Right. And so certainly that would be available in the marketplace that you could partner with. And so there is a scarcity in the marketplace. I think that drives valuations, along with some of the macro trends that you talked about: interest rates, availability of capital, kind of dry powder. But I just think that, like, we're in this for the long haul, right? This is 15, 20 years for us. And so, in terms of our particular view of how we look at companies, we want to partner with great entrepreneurs who have great emerging brands. And we're pretty specific. We're only going to be a home service franchisor. That's all we're interested in. We're not going to be bricks and mortar. We're not going to look at restaurant. We're going to stay very true to who we are. And I think in that space, you create a good reputation, you build good relationships, and then you work through what a fair value is for that asset. And honestly, I mean, you all know this, the small brands in the space really don't have EBITDA. They don't have a lot of earnings. You're investing in the people, you're investing in the brand and the model and what you think you can do with it. So I think we're just going to continue to be active in that space personally and just do the right things. I mean, our model is long-term relationships with that founder, right? So that's very authentically, we want to look at a long run where they stay in. They're the leader of that brand, and we wrap our infrastructure around them and drive them to a national level.
I think that's a really good distinction between what you're doing and what some of the other groups out there are doing. This is not just about a liquidity event for a founder. This is about probably some liquidity, and then resources and help and expertise, where the founder probably went to a certain point and they're like, either they realize they weren't the one to take them to the next level, or they found a partner that could take them to the next level where they could do the things that they enjoy the most and build a brand with a partner like Happinest. Is that a pretty accurate way to say it?
Exactly. You're spot on. And like, that's honestly where our conversations start. What do you want to get out of this? What are you trying to accomplish? And, certainly it's ultimately about the collective we and what we're building. But we like to hear, look, I got to a certain point. I got it to here. I'm really passionate about this thing. I know it operationally inside and out. I just can't see myself taking it from 10 to 500, and I need help. And, that help looks like all the things we've talked about: capital, people, processes, technology, marketing capabilities, sales processes and infrastructure. Maybe there's a manufacturing, research and development kind of component to that. And are we the right fit? So we start with what are their goals? We absolutely look at culture fit. I started the conversation with culture. That's everything to us. And so we want to make sure that, hey, we're going to spend a lot of time together, right? We're going to be in the trenches. So does that kind of work? And then from there, we go to work on the model. Do we like the model, and do we see that we can add value at a unit level for every franchisee who joins? Is it lift for them where they're getting more? And for that entrepreneur who put their heart and soul into their business, it's their baby. In every case, every conversation I've ever had, it's like, can we add value to that and make sure that, one, they get to see their vision become a reality, and we really believe in our hearts that we can do it. And then, of course, from a financial perspective, in the long run, it's worth it for them to be a part of that journey.
So these are not brands with massive valuations, typically 100 plus units open, a strong EBITDA numbers. That certain groups look for that, and that's what they want. That fits that profile. You're looking at young brands or brands that are maybe EBITDA positive, maybe still have a burn and no cash flow, and those are kind of ideal brands for you.
Exactly. And I don't, I never say never, right? So I look, if there's something a little bit larger, that's a great fit. It's all the things we've talked about. It's in-home service. It's a vertical we want to be in. There's a great, founder, leader who wants to stay in and take it to another level. And we feel it has all the attributes that we're interested in. We would talk to anyone of any size, candidly, because we're really confident we can add value. But our sweet spot to date has been the emerging brand that, again, is not cash flow positive, is kind of at a point with a limited number of units, and they realize that they really need a catalyst and kind of an authentic partner who's going to be in it with them, not just deliver capital. I mean, you can get capital, pretty much from a number of different sources. They know they need more than capital, and they want to partner with someone who can add all the things they need.
So I'm going to ask you numbers and different things like that. And this is not to pin you down on numbers. So if you can be vague, you could just say, Erik, I don't want to answer that. And that's a completely fine answer. What I'm trying to do in the podcast in general, just so the listeners know, I'm trying to dive into numbers a little bit deeper. And just so the listeners also know, franchisees have to be careful with some of this stuff. So for legal reasons. So I'm never trying to do this from the intention of trying to do something that might be harmful to the brand. So if you ever hear a franchisor just not answer something, they're probably smart not answering it, or I didn't ask the question in the right way. So let's talk about, I know of brands that have had, a $100 million plus exits over the past number of years. And they're larger brands growing. There's a lot of reasons why they're getting those types of valuations. And there's reasons why people are paying that for that. With a brand that's EBITDA negative, what is a range that you've seen out there for prices on brands like that? Just so, and the reason I'm asking it is that way, these brands out there that might be in that situation, they might think they have a brand that's worth 100 million with no EBITDA when it's really worth $1 million. So anything that you can provide around
absolutely.
that
I
would be
could
fantastic.
speak in generalities, and not at all to avoid the question, but because there's such a wide range. I would say, when you're looking at a brand, it's not going to be a multiple of EBITDA, as we talked about. You're going to look intrinsically at what you think the value of that. Some of it is candidly going to be a work through with the entrepreneur to say, what do you really need? What are you really trying to get out of this? So if you have a lot of debt on the business, generally you want to pay that off and feel very comfortable with where you are. There's certainly some lifestyle considerations that come in that, hey, I really want to make sure that I have X. So no matter what happens, like my downside, I'm okay. Right. And then everything from here on out is upside. So we have those kind of conversations. It's not this specific multiple, and it really depends on the asset. I will tell you, generally speaking, candidly, is the entrepreneur always feels that the business is worth a lot more. It's not really about the earnings. It's about, I've worked on this for 10, 15 years, to your earlier point, and I really feel it's worth X. And that's one of the hardest parts of the conversation, right? Is that, I value you, I value the brand, we like the model and the vertical it's in, but that value doesn't work for us. And we need to kind of move to a place where the valuation makes sense today for us and you. And then ultimately, the value in these circumstances is clearly created in the future, right?
That's
so it's much more about the belief in what we can build and what value we can add than it is a transaction in a moment in time, because that's not going to be the big exit. The second bite at the apple is going to be the big exit if you do.
That's important. Let's talk more about that, because let's say you acquired a brand and that brand gave you equity. What kind of equity do you like to get in a brand? Is that a fair question?
Yeah, I would just say generally we're going to be a majority shareholder.
So majority shareholder
because we're bringing capital, we're bringing the people, we're going to bring that infrastructure and process to bear. And candidly, within the bigger platform, we feel that the value we bring is worth that. We are very much partners, and the entrepreneur, if they want to be the CEO, go forward, not shift to a different role, which is typically the case, they're making the day-to-day decisions. They're driving the brand, but we do need to have a majority ultimately in a platform scenario. And, I'd rather not get into the specifics, but, what I always say is, look, you don't take percentages to the bank, you take dollars to the bank. So if you believe we're the right partner, 15, 20 years, when that's your exit, it's going to look very different with a relationship with us than it would, uniquely on your own, or, we'd like to think virtually with anyone else out in the market in terms of how we sort of approach things and the value we can add.
So Scott, this is the first time I've really been able to have a conversation like this on the podcast. So I'm getting excited about this, and you're giving very good detailed information, even though you might think it's vague. It's like, people don't get to have conversations, like they don't get to sit in conversations like you and I are having right now. They're new in franchising, or they've never been a part of an exit. They just don't get to have these interesting conversations, and I get to have them all the time. So I love it. So I think,
could I just make one comment there? I think, Erik, what's really important, and I say this right up front to anyone I meet who we're having this type of conversation, I want them to be really thoughtful. I want them to talk to people and do their research and be educated. This is their shot. Like this, when you shake hands with someone and build a partnership and a long-term relationship, you want to make sure that it's right. And so it's just as important to us that they're knowledgeable, and we're happy to be helpful in that process. Just generally, I'm really passionate about helping young entrepreneurs learn and grow. People were really generous in my career early on. Some of the iconic names in franchising sat down with me and helped me understand just the basics of franchising. And I just think from that perspective, if we can help, even if it's not us, that's okay. There's a lot of opportunity in the marketplace. Again, we're in this for the long run. If you put good out there and you help people, good things happen. And I truly believe that. So, happy to share the information today, happy to work with people individually. And I say, if something doesn't happen, we're always going to be friends in franchising, and we're always here to help you. And that's a very genuine offer to your viewers and listeners.
I love it. And it's interesting. Like I'm the same way. Even in the mastermind, there's people that join my franchisee mastermind, the franchisor mastermind, and they are very transactional in the beginning. And I'm like, just try it out, just get in there. And I said, typically what happens is, if you try, most people don't leave once they start, but if they do leave for whatever reason, I'm always like, hey, Caleb, Stacy, stop their payment, give them an extra month to be able to find anything that they want in the portal, listen to anything, watch anything, attend any live events. And I love it when they reach out to me 3 months, 4 months, 1 year later, former members, and they ask me a question because they know that they can, because we have a relationship built. And franchising in general is a really small world. You and I, it's so small. You and I know that. And once you build up that reputation, like that's what you have. So let's go back to a brand. Let's say you acquire majority, even at zero. Let's say you pay them zero. Do you think it's worth it for a brand that has 5, 10 franchisees, EBITDA negative, for them to give you majority of the company, zero transaction, just give you the majority? Now you're partners and you have this machine in Happinest and a reputation and a track record that you've done. Is that fair for some brands?
That's a great question. And of course, I'm going to say, yes, we like to see that, but I would say I would go back to start with their goals, right? And so if they're levered, they're going to want to be in a position to pay off that debt and not have go forward debt. So, you need to consider that. I think, and every situation may not be right for us, depending on how that's been treated in the past. I think from a personal perspective, there's generally a component of I need something emotionally and I need something for, my personal needs. But candidly, we do see transactions that are at a lower valuation in this space, because again, it's all about what you're going to build, right? And that's not a way for us to negotiate down to a lower number. It's truly that we're going to build a lot of value, and that's where the value creation is for that particular entrepreneur. So yeah, I think it's all needs based. What are they willing to do? What are they trying to accomplish in the long term? What's their time horizon? What are the alternatives that they have available to them? But again, when I look at entrepreneurs, if they just need capital alone, it's just not typically the case. It's not going to solve what they need to kind of solve for, right? And there's some limitations and there's cost related to that. It's really all about what are you getting in that transaction and what are you trying to accomplish in the long term. And if you partner with the right partner, whether it be Happinest or another partner in the marketplace, you should be able to look up in the long term and see a lot of value creation. And as long as you make the right decision in terms of a partner.
So good. And it's true. And I think this is probably going to be the beginning of that for some of the listeners, some of the brands. And some of the brands would come back and listen to this and be like, oh, Erik and Scott were talking about this, and now I'm absolutely in that place. So I framed that question because that's, franchisees think their franchise is worth a lot more than it is. And then if they are not doing very well as a franchisee, they usually end up getting zero for that. And they're walking away and another franchisee acquires that because they wanted too much in the beginning. They lost the opportunity to sell and now it's worth zero. And so I see the same thing as franchisors. If you are not where you wanted to go, you're not growing as fast as you wanted to grow, you haven't built enterprise value like you thought you should, partnering with a group like this, that's like the golden ticket in my mind with some brands, depending on what it is. But you find the golden ticket like this, you're not looking at enterprise value or the value of your brand today. You're looking at it, what can it be in 10 years or 20 years? And what would it take for me to do that alone? Like doing what I've done hasn't gotten me where I want to go. So if I now look 5, 10, 15 years in the future, is it worth me giving up or getting very little today, but being able to partner with an engine that can and a machine that can bolt onto this and grow enterprise value to where it will be where it would never be with you alone. So this is a really good conversation. I hope it's eye-opening to some brands out there. What would you say to that, or what else is eye-opening to brands when you talk to them?
Well, I would go back to the positives I see are, certainly the entrepreneur. I love the entrepreneurial spirit and the passion that they have. I think how they've bootstrapped it usually and done really good things that they may not even realize are as good as they are. There's a lot of value there. I think it's really comes down to partnership, what you want to accomplish. Like that's the conversation. And I agree with you. You know, what I find is it's, you know, I'm going to go it alone, and you feel like all of a sudden something's going to change because, you know, let's face it, entrepreneurs, they have a belief, they're positive by nature, they're passionate. And it's like, but if I keep doing this, something's going to change. And all of a sudden, I can't tell you how many times respectfully I've heard, well, you know, we've sold 2, 3 a year, but this year it's going to be 25, and then we're going to get to 50, and then we're going to get over that 100 barrier. And, you know, unless something really changes structurally, that typically doesn't happen. They go it alone longer, and then maybe you revisit that conversation and maybe you can be helpful to them. So I think that's, you know, maybe some advice. I'm not really one to give advice, but generally speaking, like be honest with yourself in terms of what that structural change is going to be that's going to get you to a different place. And if it's not happening, maybe take a look at some of the opportunities out in the marketplace and see if that's a better road, because really, you know, time is not your friend. I've learned that, you know, through this process where, you know, if you're going slow in a category that's a very attractive category, you're not the only one in it, right? Yep. And so other brands are gaining a foothold and growing very quickly if they're, you know, part of a really good organization, and maybe you're not growing at the same rate. And you might have a better brand, you might have a better mousetrap, but you're falling behind every day. You're trying to do it on your own. And so I don't want that to sound at all like a sales presentation. Everyone has to make their own decisions, but look at opportunity cost in the process and just be really honest with yourself along the way.
So good. So how do brands build enterprise value? Or how have you seen people that come into Happinest, or even brands that you've looked at, you're like, oh my gosh, we could really help them with these things, and those things increase enterprise value?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's a lot to that. I would say, look, you look at what they have that's really working and what is sort of missing, right? What's that gap and lift analysis where, you know, you really think that you could do. Typically, there's a few things that we see, you know, generally speaking, repetitively, right? So the first thing is franchise development. You know, we're just not selling enough units. We don't really know how to do this. You look at that whole process end to end. You know, you look at broker network access, you look at the team that's representing that brand, and you look at how you can build value through points of distribution. So that's one piece. And, you know, that's a process that we understand kind of how to plug into and ramp brands up in terms of unit base.
So you've got some great people working on that for you.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Very, very proud of the team and super fortunate. So, you know, a lot of brands stop there. You know, everyone talks about unit count, and, you know, that's not enterprise value, right? So then you have to look at, all right, well, what does the consumer marketing look like? What's the target market? What are you doing to approach that consumer? Are the franchisee budgets appropriate? And then you look at the capabilities you have to kind of grow that quickly from the time a franchisee starts through their life cycle. And then, you know, that translates obviously to sales revenue, and then that revenue, you know, ultimately offsets your cost and, you know, becomes your margin. So we kind of look at that, certainly adding value in the sales process. So for Happinest, we made the decision a few years ago to build a call center. And the impetus behind that was, what we found is, quite candidly, we saw a shift in the marketplace in terms of consumer engagement with different types of media. And we built a lot of that capability in our in-house marketing, and our team became very good at it. And so we were actually overwhelming our new franchisees with leads, and they couldn't respond to those consumers fast enough. Like, consumers have higher expectations today of how that engagement with a brand's going to work. And so that success with marketing then led to, okay, we need to help with this, because we have a new franchisee that's learning a business, that's starting from, you know, a vehicle in a new territory, building something special here, and they can't do it all. Hire their first employees, engage with the consumer, learn the model, et cetera. And so we built this call center, and we found immediate lift in terms of our ability to engage with the customer. And we make the sale for the franchisee and deliver it right into their system, so they can then go out and service that customer. So that's the next piece, is how do you kind of monetize your media investment into sales that then translate to revenue for your franchisees. And then it's, of course, all the operational pieces. How do you get not only the franchisee, but their employees proficient in the model and the operational aspects very quickly? So you look at training content and how to deliver that and how to sort of chunk that out in a way that's consumable to the very busy franchisee and the frontline worker who's starting, at a zero level of knowledge in that particular brand and operation usually. And then you go to, we're very fortunate that I'm just coming from our manufacturing facility where we build equipment and we outfit vehicles. And the reason we do that is because we want that frontline technician to feel really valued in the unit that they're working in. It's very professional, but also operational efficiency. So we know that we can get more jobs done every single day, and that compounds out because we have a really unique delivery system in all of our brands. And so, it's not one thing, it's all of those things. And then really coaching franchisees on profitability. And when all these things are happening, how do you then manage your P&L and become good at that? Really understanding, what your break-even point is and what your contribution margin is, and what it's going to take to get you to where you want to be, and really be transparent as to what that journey is going to look like. I think if you start with like-minded franchisees coming into the system and you take them through this process and you execute really well, it's not perfect. We make mistakes. Something may not work as well as you like, but there's a lot of visibility for them into what we're doing. And then they experience success. And then there's more franchisees like them who join the system. You have validation, you're able to sell more franchises. And it's kind of that virtuous cycle, if you will. And that sustained over years, candidly, that creates enterprise value. And for each individual franchisee, you're creating value along the way as they're building. So, you touched on before relationship being at the center of franchise. That's true of a transaction, a partnership. That's true of franchising. For Lawn Doctor in particular, again, been around 55 years. We have franchisees who have been with us for over 40 years. We have second generation operators. You don't get that without treating franchisees right, having a good relationship, and then a good system to support them. They have to do the work. We're very clear about that. They have to execute. They have to recruit the right people on the front lines. But that's the basis for success. And it's not a quick fix. It's not a silver bullet. We set that expectation with franchisees who are joining our brands and with partners that this is a journey we're going to take together. We're going to be authentic. We're going to execute really well, but it's a process. So, again, that goes back to the alignment with the entrepreneur. They have to be in it for the long haul and want to participate in that process with us.
We're talking about some of your franchisees. So I love that answer, by the way, and franchisors should go back and listen to that and transcribe it. And he just gave you the playbook on building enterprise value, which is also, there's things in there that you can't do, won't do. It's 3 years down the road to some of those things that he mentioned. You might want to look at bringing in a partner. Maybe it's a financial partner that is able, or new CEO, or whoever it is, whatever it is. If you do what you've always done, you get what you've always got. So you probably need to look at doing something if you do want to build enterprise value. And I love how you've said it multiple times, Scott, partnership. So this isn't a buyout. This is a partnership. And it's a very unique way of a way to build a brand and then do the next thing with that brand. Most people think I just got to build it to sell it, but you can start it and partner with a group like this. I like that.
You mentioned partnership. I'll pull on that thread quickly. Our vision is to partner with passionate entrepreneurs to build iconic brands. That's our vision. And that translates to both levels we're talking about. If you're an entrepreneur who has a brand and you may consider a partnership with Happinest, we're going to build an iconic brand with you. Same thing at a unit level. You're part of this family and building an iconic brand. Every franchise we open is part of that whole story. And we take that very seriously, and we're fortunate that we've become, pretty good at executing against that vision.
What are some of the things that, as you look at your franchisees over the years, what are the things that you most appreciate about your franchisees, or the things you look back and it's like, man, they're amazing this way, or they've done these amazing things? Like, what would you say?
I mean, generally, we bring in really positive franchisees. It's part of our culture. I always go back to that. And you just need to be positive. You need to be really passionate and driven, because there will be bad days, there will be mistakes, those kind of things. I feel like resilience, particularly in the current marketplace, and some of the things we're seeing with, downward pressure on margins because of fuel costs, product costs, labor inflation, and so forth. I think there's a resilience that has to come along with that. And I'm amazed with our franchisees across brands, how they just, they have that ability to grit it out and to be resilient. The innovation of franchisees, you hear all the stories from all the big brands in terms of some of their best products or services came from franchisees. We believe that, and I've seen that. And sometimes you see that amazing idea and you're like, oh, geez, why didn't we think of that? Because they're on the front lines doing it every day. They're interacting with their employees. They're interacting with customers. They're actually doing the work in the local marketplace. And so they have some of the very best ideas, and they tend to be really innovative and help all of our brands candidly lift higher. So I love some of those kind of attributes. I do love, I touched on this before, seeing the multi-generation operators where we're really creating generational wealth. Like, our goal is we want to have millionaires in our system, right? And, to see someone come in that has no customers, no experience, and they have a level of success and exit the business, and their son or daughter comes in and takes it to a completely different level. Like, that's just an amazing feeling. And to me, that's the core of what I want to see happen. That win for the entrepreneur who's coming in from a brand perspective, and the win for the franchisee who's part of that brand and sees the vision, them exiting with grace and, having achieved their goals. That's our passion.
I love it, man. Well said. We got into some really cool things in this show. How can people find you? They're like, I want to talk to Scott about my brand. How do people find you?
I think the best way to engage is to go to our Happinest website, happinest.com. There's a form, you could fill that out. That comes to my executive assistant, and she brings those opportunities to me. So, certainly if you just forget the specific URL, you just go online and look at Happinest brands, you're going to find us in a few places, and most of those roads come back to me. So, that'd be a great start. And certainly, in the community, there's a number of people who know who we are, and, we could certainly connect, offline as well.
Scott, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, it was great chatting with you, and really good spending some time. Thanks so much.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Franchise Secrets Podcast. Whether you're watching or listening, please make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel and to whatever channel you're listening on. If you want my help with anything from buying a franchise to franchising your business, please visit franchisesecrets.com.